Today we're going to talk about the types of ex that you should avoid at all costs. Now you wouldn't think this would be a controversial topic, but I've found that it is. And that's mostly because of the fact that everyone coming to my website or my YouTube channel is hell-bent on getting an ex back, even in cases when they shouldn't. And so when you kind of hold up a mirror and show people like, hey, this is a situation where you should not be trying to win an ex back, they don't necessarily listen. But everything that I'm gonna talk about today, every type of ex that is on this list, in my experience, is not worth even trying to get back. So there's a lot to cover. Let's buckle up and go. Type number one, the serial cheaters. I wanna start off by saying that not all exes who cheat are necessarily a serial cheater. So what is a serial cheater? Well, I consider it to be someone who gets in the habit of cheating on their partners. Usually, this isn't a one-time mistake. Rather, it's a consistent thing that they've done throughout the history of their relationship. Now, usually the way it works is simple. Your ex, before they dated you, was with someone else. They cheated on that person with you. They enter into a relationship with you. They meet someone else while they are with you. And again, guess what? They cheat on you with that other person. And that is like the history of all of their relationships. And we always have this thought that we like to believe that we're different, that we are the one that gets them to stop. But in my experience, when you're dealing with serial cheaters like this, they don't stop. And it's really the logic right there that should cause you to stop. So the people who I think are most high risk of dealing with individuals like this are people who ended up getting into a relationship with their boyfriend or their last ex, and that last ex cheated with them on their previous ex. So if your foundation of the relationship was built on a lie, what's to stop this person from doing the exact same thing to you? So keep an eye out for that. That's the first ex to avoid, in my opinion. Type number two. They are engaged to someone else. It's painful when an ex won't commit to you in a relationship. Maybe you break up with them or they break up with you because you're not the one, only to jump into a relationship with the next person, then immediately commit to them. You start the self-blame. You're thinking, what's wrong with me? How can I fix it? And there's something deep inside of you that wants to pursue them. And I understand that. I'm here to tell you don't. If your ex is engaged to another person, that's usually a sign that things are done, you need to move on. And here's my reasoning. Let's say that you do pursue them, and let's say that you're successful. They break up with their fiancé, enter into a relationship with you. The entire time that you're with them from that point forward, you are going to know that you were their second choice. That they committed very easily to this other person when they wouldn't commit to you. And weirdly enough, they still won't commit to you. And you're living with this fact, and it will pollute your relationship and ruin the relationship. And it's not going to be the thing that you fantasize in your mind about. It's going to be misery. So let them make someone else miserable. Type number three. A history of violence. Now this is a no-brainer. If there's any kind of physical or emotional violence involved in the relationship with you and them, there's no way that you should ever be dealing with this person in your life again. In fact, you should get a restraining order, consult a lawyer, figure out how to protect yourself legally and physically. But I'm not just gonna stop there. I think a history of violence is enough to make you sit back. So what does that mean? Well, if they on the offhand mention that they were physically violent with one of their exes, that's a major red flag, and you should leave this person immediately. I know there's a thing with second chances, but I don't think it's worth the risk at all. So I would just avoid. Type number four, they don't share the same values as you. I can't claim credit for this one. So a lot of times when I'm filming videos like this and running out of ideas on how to attack things in a new way, I will go to Facebook and ask the people there. And that's what I did. And oftentimes the responses they give are really interesting, like this one right here. This person said, there was one DA, dismissive avoidant ex, a couple of years back. We were in a situationship for 8 months at the end of our college year. We had to break it off because of religious reasons. I did the silent treatment, never rushed back to him to be clingy with him. He tried to come back around, but it's not for what I wanted. And this really got me thinking. Each of us has what we call core values, the non-negotiables that we kind of need in relationships. For some people, they're really weird. Like for me, I couldn't ever date someone who smokes. That's a core value. Anyone who smokes is immediately off my list. For other people, it can be something like religious reasons. It's personal to each individual. In fact, I talked about this a long time ago on my podcast with a guy named Chase from the I Do podcast. And he talks really about these non-negotiable values that we have and how important they are to stand by. And the comment above, religion, was definitely one of those non-negotiable values that this person couldn't deal with. And that's okay. The last thing you want is to be in a relationship with someone who has completely different values than you. And so here's my urging for you. If you're sitting there trying to get an ex back and you know deep in your heart that their values are just not shared, it's not worth continuing on. Because even if you do get this person back, eventually the two of you are going to clash over these values, and either you're going to be miserable, they're going to be miserable, and a breakup will inevitably occur. I'm not in this to help you get back with an ex that you don't stick with for the long run. I want success for you. Type number 5. You have been on and off more than 5 times. Now, this was something that I instinctually knew, but it was only after reading this comment that it truly clicked for me. So this person says, yep, my ex before ERP is someone I would never get back. We were together for 5 years and broke up multiple times, mainly for immature reasons. I got tired of the back and forth after not talking for small amounts of time, so no contact officially until I completely walked away for good. Focused on myself, finished school. He came back each time, especially when I ignored him fully. This continued for 6 years post-breakup. Last time he reached out to me was almost a year ago, randomly saying something reminded him of me, and I was hard to forget. This was even after I told him there was no chance of a future together, and currently he's with his new girlfriend. Can you imagine being on again and off again with someone for 5 years? And then for 6 whole years after that, they're trying to get on again with you? Now, I've been on record multiple times saying that these type of situations are actually the easiest to find success in, because oftentimes people who find themselves in these situations are addicted to the chase. They like that weird on again, off again in between period where they have to try to get you back because it kind of reignites the honeymoon period. But it's a diminishing return. Each time that honeymoon period gets reignited when the on again, off again phase resets, it's lessened and lessened and lessened. And so they're in effect just chasing their tail, going around in circles. But there are 2 types of people who enter into these type of relationships. There are the type that are able to break the mold, and then there are the type who are eternally stuck in the mold. And if you've been on again and off again for more than 5 times with your current boyfriend/girlfriend, I hate to break it to you, but this is probably not going to change. Generally speaking, I've found that around 2 or 3 times is the norm for when you are allowed to break this mold. Anything more than that, you're getting into dangerous territory. Type number 6, the control freak. Now, this trope usually happens when a woman, our client, is dating a man, and the man's trying to overly control who she's seeing, what she's wearing. I've seen tons of situations like this. But I'd actually like to flip this trope on its head, because we actually had a male client come in and tell the story of the time he was dating a woman that was super controlling, and I found it intriguing enough to list here. So here's what this guy says. He says, my ERP ex that I thought was the love of my life, but it turns out that through reach outs, it turns out that it was best to leave her. She tried to control what was going on before we even got together, i.e. controlling who I had as friends, who I could and couldn't see/talk to. These are the people I build friendships with throughout my no contact period, and people that helped me find who I was. I owe more to them than I do to her. The reason I think this is an ex worth avoiding is because this kind of controlling behavior is usually rooted in anxious attachment style core wounds. So the anxious attachment style core wound is a fear of abandonment. So really what this person is trying to do is they're trying to make this guy into Rapunzel. She's trying to lock him into a tower so that he can never get out unless she gives him permission to get out. i.e. controlling who he sees, who he talks to, what he wears, what he's eating. Everything is controlled. All because she's afraid of being abandoned by him. And that's a hard thing to change, especially because if they're willing to allow their anxious behaviors to go to that extent, it's really, really rooted and hard to change immediately. And it usually doesn't get better. It can, but it's hard to come by. So statistics say it's not going to be as simple as that. Type number 7, they are ashamed of you. And I'm gonna leave us with the most interesting comment to my post on Facebook. Our client says, I used to date a 6'1" model. I'm 5'7". I would always try to plan dates, but she would always come up with an excuse to cancel. Months later, after everything ended, I found out that she was ashamed of my height, and she was with me behind closed doors because women talk, and she wanted to find out for herself. 8 years later, she's found out I'm single, and she's sliding into my DMs. Now, I love this story because it really exemplifies that success and living well is the best revenge in life. But what you don't want to be ultimately is with someone who's ashamed of who you are. Not really sure I need to address this much more, but usually it's going to be some sort of physical characteristic that you have that someone is unwilling to overlook. And the fact that they're ashamed of that is not going to bode well for long-term commitment. So let's recap. There are 7 types of exes that you should avoid at all costs. The serial cheaters, the exes who are engaged to someone else, the exes who have shown a history of violence, the exes who don't share the same values of you or that you've been on again and off again with for more than 5 times, the control freak, and the exes that are ashamed of you. If you're dating any of these exes, my recommendation will be to stop trying to get them back and start trying to move on. Which, ironically, is if you do that, that's what usually gets them to come back. So you get the last laugh anyways, so get busy moving on.